The flight from Jakarta to Sydney had boarded under a sky streaked with soft amber clouds, the kind that made people believe nothing bad could possibly happen. Passengers chatted lightly as they found their seats. Some were returning home, some were heading out for business, and others were simply chasing new beginnings. Flight 719 had departed right on time, the aircraft gleaming beneath the airport lights as if promising a smooth, ordinary journey. For the first few hours it kept that promise. The engines hummed steadily, the cabin crew glided down the aisles with practiced grace, and most passengers settled into the serenity of cruising altitude. Children giggled at cartoons glowing on small screens. Couples whispered plans for what they'd do when they landed. Others dozed lightly under the soft glow of overhead lights. Even the turbulence warnings that sometimes flickered during long flights were blissfully absent. But just beyond the vast stretch of the Arafura Sea, the aircraft's calm facade began to crumble. The first sign was subtle, a barely perceptible tremble like a heartbeat skipping. Only a few passengers noticed, lifting their heads curiously before shrugging it off. Airplanes shook sometimes, no reason to panic. But then the tremble deepened into a shudder, rattling trays and causing overhead panels to vibrate. The seat belt sign dinged sharply. A few anxious whispers fluttered through the cabin. Inside the cockpit, however, things were far from subtle. A flashing red indicator burst to life on the pilot's console, accompanied by a shrill alarm that sliced through the crew's concentration. Captain Roderick Halley, a veteran pilot with more than 20 years of experience, felt his stomach drop as he read the alert. Left engine malfunction. Automatic restart failed. Almost immediately after, another warning began to pulse right engine. Overheating. His co-pilot, First Officer Leanne Voigt, quickly scanned the instrument panels. "This can't be right," she murmured. The system showing contradictory readings, but the plane itself confirmed the danger. It tilted sharply to its left side, sending a wave of gasps rippling through the passengers. Water bottles toppled. A child cried. An elderly man gripped his armrest so tightly his knuckles turned white. Captain Halla grabbed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelts. We are experiencing a technical issue," and his voice cracked barely, but enough for people to hear the fear beneath the professional calm. The intercom clicked off before he finished, because at that moment the aircraft lurched again, dropping altitude faster than it should. In the cabin, panic spread like wildfire. A young mother clutched her toddler, pressing his face into her shoulder as oxygen masks suddenly dropped with a hiss. A businessman clutched at his chest as his breathing quickened. Someone shouted a prayer in a language half the passengers didn't understand. A few seats down, another swore that something was wrong with the flight path on screen. The altitude number was decreasing far too quickly. And in seat 28A, near the window, sat a man who had remained silent since boarding. Arjun Malik. He looked at a glance like any ordinary traveler, mid-30s, tall, with tired eyes and worn shoes that looked like they had walked thousands of miles. He carried no flashy watch, no name-brand luggage. The only unusual thing about him was the way he scanned his surroundings, not with fear, but with analysis. Most passengers saw him as a quiet man who kept to himself, nodding politely but never initiating conversation. No one knew where he was coming from or where he was going. No one even knew why he had taken this flight. What no one could have guessed was that Arjun had once spent 10 years as an aircraft systems engineer working in a classified government aerospace division and expert in onboard diagnostics and emergency flight systems. But he had left that life behind for reasons he had never shared with anyone. He hoped never to use that knowledge again. But fate had a different plan. As the plane continued to lose altitude and alarms wailed with increasing urgency, Arjun squeezed his eyes shut for 2 seconds. Just 2 to decide whether to intervene or stay invisible as he had for years. 2 seconds was all it took for him to realize that doing nothing was no longer an option. He unbuckled his seatbelt. The woman next to him gasped, "Sir, you can't stand now." "The plane is I know," he said calmly, "but someone has to." He placed a hand gently but firmly on the headrest in front of him, steadied himself against the violent shaking, and began moving toward the cockpit, toward the chaos, toward the danger, toward whatever waited on the other side of that locked door. Nobody knew yet that he might be their only hope. But the sky outside was darkening. The engines were failing, and 200 lives were hanging by a thread. And Arjun Malik was about to break every promise he had made to himself. The moment Arjun Malik stepped into the aisle, the chaos around him seemed to sharpen rather than overwhelm him. Every cry, every shaking motion of the aircraft, every flashing light above the passengers, he took it all in with unsettling precision. Yet on the inside, he felt the heavy weight of a past he had tried desperately to leave behind pressing on his chest. He steadied himself against a row of seats as the plane jolted again, this time harder, causing several passengers to scream. A suitcase tumbled from an overhead compartment, hitting the floor with a thud. A flight attendant struggled to maintain her balance while attempting to comfort a child who had begun hyperventilating. Arjun pushed past them gently. Most people were too panicked to notice him, but one of the senior flight attendants, Maria, did. Her sharp eyes widened as she saw him heading toward the cockpit door. Sir. She called over the roar of the engines. "You can't go up there. Please return to your seat." "It's unsafe." Arjun paused only long enough to say, "I can help." The words were steady, quiet, but filled with a conviction that made Maria's protest falter. "But help? How?" she stammered, holding on to a seat to keep from falling as the plane vibrated violently. Arjun leaned in so she could hear him. "I'm an engineer. Aerospace systems. I know what's happening in there, and I know you're running out of time." Maria stared into his eyes, searching for deception or panic. Instead, she found a calm clarity she hadn't seen in anyone else on board, not even some of the other crew. It was the look of someone who understood the stakes. She swallowed and nodded once. "Go." The cockpit door was locked, but protocol allowed the crew to override it from the outside. Maria keyed in the emergency code, and the door clicked. Open after a tense 2 seconds. Inside, the cockpit was a different universe entirely. It was pure chaos, but not the loud, emotional chaos of the passenger cabin. This was silent desperation. A battlefield of blinking lights, error warnings, and failing instruments. Captain Roderick Haley looked up sharply as the door swung open. For a moment, suspicion flashed across his face. Who is this? No passengers are allowed in. Arjun held up his hands as the aircraft jerked again. Captain, I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because your engine readings aren't adding up. First Officer Leanne Voigt shot him a glare. Excuse me? And how would you know that? Get back, because, Arjun said, stepping forward despite the turbulence. Your diagnostic sensors have been overridden by a voltage surge. It's feeding the system conflicting data. The left engine isn't dead, it's not receiving proper signals. And the overheating warning isn't real. It's a false trip. You're losing altitude because the system is blocking your engine. Restart. The cockpit fell silent. Captain Hale stared at him for a long, tense moment. Who exactly are you? Arjun hesitated only a fraction of a second. A former aerospace systems engineer. I worked in a classified division dealing with exactly this type of malfunction. If you let me in, I can bypass the error manually. Leanne's fingers hovered over the controls. We have procedures for this, You don't have time. For procedures, Arjun cut in, his voice still calm but underscored with urgency. Your engine restart window is shrinking. At this rate, you'll hit the water in 12 minutes, maybe less. That landed with the sharpness of a knife. Both pilots exchanged a quick glance. Leanne was the first to speak. Captain? And. Hawley made the decision that would haunt or save them all. What do you need? He asked. Arjun exhaled, relief flickering through him. I need access to the panel under your primary console. The captain slid his chair back immediately. Arjun dropped to his knees, prying open the metal panel with practiced precision. A tangle of wires met his view, some flickering with inconsistent power flow. Sparks danced dangerously close to his fingers. Behind him, the pilots fought to stabilize the aircraft. The altitude readings continued to plunge. The artificial horizon line wavered red. A warning alarm pulsed again. Arjun wasn't listening to any of it. He was somewhere deep in his own world, the world he had promised he'd never return to. His hands moved with automatic memory, disconnecting a burnt-out relay, bypassing a surge blocker, rerouting voltage across a secondary circuit. We're dropping too fast. Leanne shouted, 2,000 feet lost in under a minute. Just give me 30 more seconds, Arjun murmured. The plane tilted again. Something clanged in the cabin, maybe a cart, maybe luggage. Someone screamed. 25. Arjun whispered. His fingers twisted wires, locked them into new ports, sealed a connection with a fastener he improvised from a panel clip. Captain Hale's voice shook. If this doesn't work, it will, Arjun said. Suddenly the lights flickered. The engines coughed. Then, a powerful, steady hum filled the cockpit as the engine surged back to life. Leanne gasped. Engine restart confirmed. Stabilizing thrust. The aircraft began to level, nose lifting away from the sea that glistened ominously below. Arjun slumped back against the panel, chest heaving, hands trembling with adrenaline he wouldn't admit he felt. Captain Hawley looked at him with something between awe and disbelief. Whoever you are, you just saved every soul on this plane. And for the first time since boarding, Arjun allowed himself a small, tired smile. For a few precious seconds, the cockpit held its breath, every person inside frozen in the fragile space between disaster and salvation. The engine hum grew stronger, steadier, vibrating through the aircraft like a heartbeat returning after. Flatlining, but the danger was far from over. The plane had regained power, yes, but it was still dangerously low, skimming only a few hundred meters above the dark, rolling surface of the Arafura Sea. Captain Hawley straightened in his seat. Leanne, get me a new altitude reading. Altitude stabilizing, now climbing. Rate is slow but steady. Her voice trembled in disbelief. We're alive. But Arjun Malik wasn't ready to share the relief. Not yet. We've only bypassed the damaged circuit, he said, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. The restart is manual. If the voltage flux spikes again, the engines will stall a second time, and we won't get another chance this low. Captain. Hale's jaw tightened. What do you need us to do? Keep the climb smooth, Arjun replied. Any sharp maneuver and the surge relay I rerouted could slip. Behind them, Turbulence slammed the plane sideways as if mocking his words. The aircraft shook violently, lightning carving white scars across the horizon through the cockpit. Windows. Somewhere in the cabin, a child began crying again. The fear had not left the passengers. It had simply changed shape. Arjun reached back into the exposed panel, double-checking the improvised configuration. His hands were steady, even, though his pulse raced so fast he could feel it in his fingertips. He wasn't just fighting the aircraft's damage, he was fighting time, gravity, and the dark water waiting beneath them. A sudden blast of static crackled from the radio. Mayday! Mayday! This is Flight 719. Captain Hale spoke quickly. Voice clipped. Double engine diagnostic failure. Manual restart achieved. Regaining altitude. Request immediate emergency priority. No response, just more static. Leanne swallowed hard. We're too low for solid radio reception. Arjun felt a cold weight settle in his chest. They were climbing, yes, but slowly. Too slowly. Captain, Arjun said. What's our fuel status? Not great, Hale admitted. We lost. A lot during the malfunction. Enough to reach the coast if nothing else goes wrong. If, Arjun repeated softly. He knew better than anyone how many things could still go wrong. A. Warning light flickered again briefly. Leanne stiffened. Was that? No, Arjun said quickly, leaning back into the wiring. Just residual charge bleeding out of the old circuit. I bypassed it, but he wasn't entirely certain. He felt it, the subtle crawling sensation at the base of his spine. Something was still off. Something he hadn't found yet. He dug deeper into the wiring, palm stinging as he brushed against overheated metal. The smell of burnt circuitry lingered faintly in the cramped space. Sparks snapped near his fingers, but he didn't flinch. He needed to find a remaining fault. The plane jolted again without warning. Arjun lost his balance, slamming his shoulder against the console. Leanne shouted as her monitor flickered. What was that? She asked. Captain Hale looked grim. Wind shear. Arjun's eyes widened. At this altitude? That's impossible. It's happening, Hale replied, fighting the controls. Wind patterns are unstable out here tonight. The altitude dropped sharply only for a few seconds, but enough to steal the breath from everyone on board. Arjun felt his heart lurch. The engines were running, but the strain was visible. If the flux relay overloaded from the stress hold her steady, Arjun said quickly, voice rising. I'm stabilizing the secondary bypass. With frantic precision, he rewired a failover loop using a twisted pair of auxiliary wires. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't standard. It wasn't even in any manual. But it might hold the surge long enough for them to reach safe altitude. He locked the loop in place. Suddenly, the engine roar deepened smoother, stronger. Leanne checked her display. Thrust output normalized. We've got full engine response. Arjun. Breathed out, long and shaky. Good. Keep climbing. But they weren't safe yet. Down in the cabin, the passengers could feel the difference too. The crushing drop in their stomachs eased, replaced by a steady upward glide. People clung to each other, some praying, some sobbing quietly, some sitting frozen in shock. The older man who had gripped his armrest earlier now whispered, We're climbing? Thank God. We're climbing. But Arjun didn't hear any of it. He climbed stiffly out from beneath the console, back aching, hands scraped raw. He leaned against the bulkhead, exhausted. You'll need to stay below storm altitude, he warned. Your wings took a beating during the stall. May not tolerate high turbulence. Kala nodded. Understood. He hesitated, then added quietly, You've done more for this flight than anyone could ask. More than anyone should ever have to. But Arjun shook his head. I didn't do it alone. You kept the plane steady enough for me to work. If you hadn't, he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Lian turned from the window, eyes softening. Arjun, you saved us. He looked down at his hands burned, trembling, streaked with metal dust. Let's just get everyone home, he said. And as Flight 719 finally climbed above the darkest danger, into smoother air, Arjun Malik knew the hardest part was over. But the night was not done with him yet. For a long moment after the engine stabilized, the aircraft drifted through the night sky in something that felt almost like peace. It wasn't real peace, not yet, but the kind that comes after a storm has battered you so fiercely that simply staying upright feels like a blessing. Flight 719 had clawed its way back from the brink, its wings trembling but holding steady, its engines humming with renewed strength. The dark surface of the Arafura Sea had fallen far below them. In the cockpit, Captain Hale and First Officer Lian worked with renewed focus, their movements crisp and precise. Their fear had not vanished, but it no longer ruled them. They had something solid beneath their feet again, hope. Arjun stood behind them, exhausted but alert. His body ached from crawling under consoles and bracing against turbulence, his shirt smeared with streaks of oil and dust. But his mind stayed clear. Every part of him remained tuned to the plane's rhythm, listening for the smallest sign of danger. Altitude at 10,000 and rising, Lian reported. Climb rate steady. A breath escaped the captain. Good. Let's keep her right there. Another burst of static crackled to life on the radio, this time followed by a faint voice. Flight 719, do you copy? We have your mayday. State your condition. Captain Hale lunged forward. Air traffic control, this is Hale. We've regained engine power after a dual diagnostic failure. Requesting immediate priority landing at Darwin International. Fuel is low but stable. Copy that, 719. Darwin runway is being cleared. Emergency teams are standing by. Relief swept the cockpit like a slow, warm tide. But for Arjun, relief brought something else with it, a bone-deep weariness that threatened to pull him down. His adrenaline had finally started to ebb, and the toll of the past hour hit him like a wave. I should. Check on the passengers, he murmured. You should rest, Lian said gently, but Arjun shook his head. They've been terrified. They deserve to know they're safe. It wasn't bravado. It was empathy. Quiet, steady empathy. Captain Hale gave him a grateful nod. Go. I'll call you back if anything changes. Arjun stepped out of the cockpit. The moment he emerged into the cabin, eyes turned toward him, fearful at first, then puzzled, then awed. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a tired man who had been through hell. But the passengers could sense something had shifted. The plane no longer felt like it was dying beneath them. Maria, the senior flight attendant, rushed to him. Is it true? Are we safe? Arjun offered a small, tired smile. We're heading to Darwin for an emergency landing. The engines are stable now. Maria exhaled sharply and pressed a hand to her heart. Then she put her hands on his shoulders, eyes welling with genuine gratitude. You saved them, she whispered. All of them. Arjun shook his head. We saved them. The pilots. The crew. But Maria knew humility when she heard it. She simply squeezed his hand. Asterisk by the time the announcement came through the intercom, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We have regained full engine control. The cabin erupted into sobs, laughter, prayers, and shaky applause. People hugged strangers. A young father lifted his daughter into his arms and whispered thanks to the heavens. An older woman clutched her necklace and cried openly. Asterisk. Arjun quietly slipped back into seat 28A. He didn't want attention. He didn't want applause. He just wanted the plane to land so he could disappear again into the world where nobody knew his name. Asterisk as the plane approached Darwin, the city lights shimmered like a chain of gold beads scattered across the coastline. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, their red and white flashes painting the night with urgency. The landing gear deployed with a heavy clunk, one of the sweetest sounds the passengers had ever heard. Asterisk Captain Hale's voice came through one last time. Brace for landing. Asterisk the plane touched down harder than usual, but safely. Tires screeched, metal groaned, and the aircraft finally slowed, rolling to a stop surrounded by fire trucks and ambulances. The cabin filled with cheers so loud they drowned out even the engines. Asterisk, but by the time the crew opened the doors and the passengers began disembarking, Arjun was already on his feet. Maria called out to him, but he only gave her a small nod and slipped into the aisle. While everyone rushed forward, he walked backward through the crowd. Unnoticed. Asterisk he stepped off the plane and into the night air. Cool, quiet, uncrowded. Asterisk reporters had already begun gathering outside the terminal after hearing about the emergency landing. Camera lights flashed. Voices shouted questions. Officials scanned the passengers, clearly searching for the hero rumored to be on board. Arjun pulled his hood up. He walked past them unnoticed. Asterisk by the time anyone realized the hero wasn't among the celebrated faces exiting the gate. Arjun Malik had already vanished into the city, a man with a past he didn't want recognized. A man who'd once again slipped into the background. Asterisk he didn't need his name in headlines. Asterisk he didn't need recognition. Asterisk he only needed the knowledge that 200 strangers were alive because he chose just once to step out of the shadows. Asterisk some heroes don't wait for gratitude. Asterisk some heroes don't want glory. Asterisk some heroes simply do what must be done and walk quietly into the night. If you'd like, I can turn all 4 parts into a full formatted story, create a title, or expand the entire narrative into a full novel-length version.